Welcome to the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me podcast, a podcast designed to help you increase your influence, develop your leadership, and maximize your results. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast episode. Don't take it personally. This podcast episode is really inspired by a book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And one of his agreements, I think it's the second agreement, is don't take anything personally. And I found this concept so empowering. I wanted to do a podcast episode on it. It's been a while since I read the book, and I've got a couple of his books, and also a couple from his son, Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. And I think there's some really good, powerful concepts in there. And as with anything, anything I read, I look for the concepts that I can learn from, that I can apply, that I can really relate to. And there are some things that I may not find as helpful or as useful, or some books that I read, I don't necessarily agree with everything, or certainly some of the things in there. So, but when I come across something really good and really helpful, it's something that I feel like we all can learn from. This concept is one of them because it gives us so much emotional freedom. Don't take anything personally. And really, when you realize the power of this concept, it's the power of being proactive relative to what other people do or say, and just saying, you know what, it's what other people do or say or think is determined by their perspective and their paradigm of the world. And it says far more about them than it does me. And I have the emotional choice when someone says something, if they give an opinion or something, I have the emotional choice in the moment to take it personally and agree with it or not. But when I realize that that is a choice I can make, then I don't have to be insulted. I don't have to be offended. I don't have to take it personally and give it emotional power, because that other person is seeing the world as they are, right? And so even when it seems very personal, and maybe it's an insult they meant to offend you, I still have the emotional choice of whether I choose to get offended or not. And when we when we take something personally, we make the assumption that the other person is 100% true, or that they are seeing the world as we see it. And that may or may not be true or accurate. And so we realize that when someone gives us an opinion or they say something to us, we have the power to agree with it or not agree with it. But if we choose to agree with it, we give it power over our headspace, and it makes us easy prey, right? Because then anybody can say something, and we give away some of our emotional freedom. We give away some of our emotional power to that person if we just choose to agree with it 100%. And so that's kind of that just emotional junk, the emotional drama that we really can free ourselves up from when we just say, you know what, I'm not going to take it personally. So an example, and let me just say, I don't get this right all of the time. This is such a powerful concept, but it is one that I am far, far, far from perfect at. But I'm working on it. I just, am working on improvement, and not, realizing that this is a process. But an example of I can think of when I get this right is when I try on something, and I invariably put it on and look in the mirror, and then decide if it's the right size, if it's the right fit, is it flattering? And then I might walk out and ask an opinion from Mac. Now, if I choose to go ask his opinion, I shouldn't take it personally if he offers an opinion that is not flattering. If I say, "Hey, is this skirt too tight?" and he says, "Yes, you need a bigger size," I shouldn't choose to take that personally, because it's an opinion and I can choose to accept that or reject that. But if I've asked for it, I would hope that I would accept it. So be careful what you ask for. But my point here is I can whatever he says, I have the power to agree with it and take it for what it's worth and take the value from it, or I have the power to get insulted about it. And trust me, your life is much more peaceful when you choose not to take everything personally. When you choose not to accept the opinion someone else's opinion as 100% truth. I love, love, love Les Brown's quote here. He says, "Don't let someone else's opinion of you become your reality." And that is so true and it's so powerful and goes right along with this concept. But anyway, all that to say, I love one of the points that Ruiz offers in the section of the book where he talks about this. I'm just going to quote this. He says, or he's talking about how when we take something personally, it's really a selfish perspective because it's elevating our personal importance. He says, personal importance or taking things personally is the maximum expression of selfishness because we make the assumption that everything is about me. We think we are responsible for everything. And he goes on to say, nothing other people do is because of you, it's because of themselves. And that's where we have to realize a lot of times people offer opinions or thoughts or emotions, but they're based on their reality, right? Not necessarily our perspective. They're not living our life. They're not walking in our shoes, so to speak. And so we can let things roll off our back much easier when we realize we have the power not to take something personally. We can save ourselves so much drama, so much emotional junk, right? When we just choose not to take everything personally, we choose not to get offended because that creates conflict. And we make something big, so much of the time, we make something big out of something little just because we want to be right or we want someone else to be wrong. And so we we try to defend that. And number 1, that does create a lot of emotional energy that's negative or toxic. But number 2, it's really hard to grow or learn when you are so attached to taking things personally and being right about it all of the time, right? It kind of closes the door to thinking about something from a different perspective. If someone offers an opinion that you don't agree with, you can choose to take it personally and refuse to listen, or you can choose not to take it personally and say, maybe I could step into the picture frame that they're looking through and see what there is to see for me. And maybe I agree with that or not, but I don't have to take it personally. I don't have to take it as a judgment. I don't have to let it affect me, and I don't have the need to be accepted, right? Particularly when it's something that we don't agree with. A lot of times we are not secure enough in ourselves. And as we grow, as we develop our character, we create that self confidence and that security and the depth of character to say, I don't have to take this personally. Whatever you think, whatever you feel, it's your thoughts and your feelings and it's the way you see the world and it's not personal because you're dealing with you and I'm dealing with me because everyone has their own opinions and emotions based on their belief systems, right? And so when we're able to step away with that, it's incredibly freeing because then we don't have to base our sense of security or our sense of joy, our peace based on other people, right? Our joy isn't dependent on someone else. And when we have that freedom of emotion and we just say, you know what, I'm not going to take that personally. I'm going to choose to be proactive and not take something personally. And realizing that that gives you so much freedom in every situation, particularly at work, like with a customer. This is so applicable if you work with customers. I can remember one time was working, as a office manager in a doctor's office, physician office, and one of the patients came up and was upset about a bill, and they had gotten a bill from, a copay or something like that, and they were very upset, and they felt like their insurance should have covered everything, and they just really came up, and the particular patient came up and really were just, chewing out, for lack of a better description, the receptionist, and she had nothing to do with billing, and she had no idea what to do with it anyway, but I remember I was actually sitting in my office, but I overheard this going on, and so I just, I stepped up and I was like to the patient, I'm like, "Wait, let's just take a deeper look at that." And really, he just wanted someone to look at it. He needed to be understood in that moment, but I had the choice to take it personally when he started getting, louder and louder. A lot of times when someone doesn't feel understood, they'll get loud, they'll start yelling, they'll start being more insistent or belligerent or vocally, uh, you know, vocally challenging because they don't feel like you understand them. And but if I choose to take that personally, I could answer in the same way, and that just escalates the situation. Or I can choose not to take it personally and say, you know what, I can be proactive in the moment, respond based on values, seek first to understand. And when that person feels understood, most of the time, you're able to work through and resolve whatever it is. And in this particular case, that's exactly what happened. Once he knew somebody was interested in taking a look and making sure he didn't get double charged or overcharged or something like that, then he was much more willing to listen to the explanation once we figured out what was going on and why he'd received a bill for a copay to begin with. Right? But you see how the power of not taking something personally is so helpful when you're working in customer service or you're working with customers and sometimes they're mad or frustrated or upset. A lot of times it's not really intentionally directed at you. You just happen to be the person in the way, right? And at the moment. And so when we realize we don't have to let that interfere with our headspace. We don't have to take that personally. It's really being proactive, but particularly realizing that the world doesn't revolve around us, and the majority of what other people do or think or feel or say is more reflective of them than it is of us. Right? And you can take that just as far as you want to go. And the more, like anything, the more you apply this principle, the easier it becomes. And you realize that you find that power in being proactive and not taking something personally. Right? And that helps you raise your level of self awareness relative to your emotions and thoughts and feelings and how much power we give them. And notice I said how much power we give them, right? Your thoughts and feelings are there, but you give them the power by choosing the right or choosing the wrong response. You give that emotion more power over you. Or if you choose the right response, you give it less power over you, right? Because things are always going to happen in life that we don't like. People are going to say things we don't like. People are going to do things we don't like. And choosing to be proactive, specifically not taking it personally and realizing a lot of times it's not because of us that they're saying or doing something, right? There's always more to the story that we don't necessarily understand. And when we choose to take something personally, we're setting ourselves up for drama, for suffering, right? And I don't know, there are a lot of people who like drama, but I don't know about you, I don't, because I would much rather choose to minimize the drama, the emotional drama in life, because that creates conflict and chaos. And I don't like to give that any more attention in my life than it has to be. Right? And it's a powerful choice. It is a choice. It's not always an easy choice, but it absolutely is a choice that we can make, right? That's just the power of being proactive. One final quote from Ruiz that he elaborates on, and he talks about the power of making it a habit not to take something personally, right? Which would be back to 7 habits of highly effective people and Covey's being proactive. It's just another way to say that. But Ruiz goes on to say, "You're never responsible for the actions of others. You're only responsible for you." And when you truly understand this and refuse to take things personally, you can hardly be hurt by the careless comments or actions of others. And he goes on to, to talk about some other agreements. And there again, this is just another way to talk about being proactive, but really realizing the power of being proactive and choosing not to take something personally means it's much easier to choose the right response in the moment. And the more often we get it right, the easier it becomes to do in the future. Until next time.
Start increasing your influence and maximizing your potential with Ria's audiobooks. Available at audible.com, amazon.com, and iBooks. Please visit riastory.com to learn about Ria's books, resources, speaking, and training programs. Thanks for listening.